And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
And beyond, this is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here specifically tonight to cover the Rowdies. That is what we always do on at least these portion of the Tuesday nights. Actually, last week, I guess we went on Monday. So, Carlos, I'm already lying. This is not a good start.
We switch it up sometimes. We never said anything about our journalistic integrity and telling the truth. We just talk about the Rowdies, right? That's what we're doing on this Tuesday night, 6:47 p.m., live from the great city of Tampa, Florida. Arguably the greatest city in the world, some people are saying. I'll die on that hill, by the way. I love Tampa. You know what I don't love, James?
I think I have a guess.
Dropping points to teams that we should beat, man. Good Lord. That happened last week, I think. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. But James, yeah, it's Tuesday. We're live on all the social medias, all of them. I mean, like a lot of them. I'm sure there's somewhere missing. Despite that, James, despite the social medias we're missing, maybe we get on those soon. What's going on in your life before we talk about dropping points, winning points? To double game week this past week. Oh, that was a fun one.
Yeah, that was a little weird to deal with, but there's not too much going on right now because Carlos, for whatever reason, both the Tampa Bay Rowdies and the Tampa Bay Sun have somehow secured a bye week at the exact same time. I don't know how that happened, but neither of them will be playing this weekend. So you and I get to review the two games from last week without a preview, and the Tampa Bay Sun side, where I do the writing for RBLR, we do not have anything to cover in terms of games. So I did a little piece about Lauren Kellett, our backup goalkeeper. So check that out if you would like to hear more about or read more about the Tampa Bay Sun. But yeah, in the meantime, Carlos, I guess we might as well get into it here. There is that 2-game preview or review that we have to do at this point because the Rowdies lost and then won versus Detroit City and the Miami, respectively. Yeah, it was not what we expected, and it was certainly not what we were hoping for, but that's how it goes sometimes. In our own standings, Carlos, you got the full points for your prediction of a score against the latter, so the Miami. You jump up to 12 points. Eureka and I expected a win, but we did not get the right score. So he goes to 11 and I go to 9. That doesn't seem like I did the math right, but it's done. So the Rowdies also signed Ryan Spalding last week on loan for the rest of the season. It is the return of Spalding sanity, as Carlos christened it last year. And we're going to hope that we have some similar results because, boy, do we need it out there. And as Carlos said, we are on all the social medias right now. We are live. If you are listening to this the day that it comes out, no problem. But please do follow us on all the social media so that you can see when we're out live or just see whatever the hell else we talk about at times. You can do that on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere at RBLR Sports, including YouTube, which is, I believe, the primary place where we are live. Now, Carlos, let's get into the first game recap, and then we will get to the second one later on, and we will talk about both of them together.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, fun new little template, fun new little layout we got going on here on the live, on the video. Oh my goodness, so much texture and color. It's a great time, James, over here on the RBLR Sports Podcast. Okay, James, we played some soccer. We lost the first one, like you said. That first one was on a Wednesday night against Detroit City Football Club. They came down into the heat in Tampa Bay. And there was a crowd. I wouldn't say it was a fantastic crowd. It was a light crowd for sure on a Wednesday night. Don't blame anybody for not making a tough commute out to St. Pete. Your back line included Manjoma, Kleeman, Guillen. Of course, I skipped Farr for whatever reason, but he's still back there. Nothing new there. Pacific Neon, Gabire, Hilton, Crisostomo, and Spalding were in front of them. Nate Worth was in there in that lineup. Lovely to get a start. With Manuel Arteaga and Cal Jennings up top, notably Josh Perez not getting the start in this one. A little bit of a switch up. And the back line having to be a little plug and play recently as injuries have racked up. One of those players, Guillen, was not in for very long in this one. It would actually be his replacement, Zane Bubb, that would come in and score the equalizer in that first half for the Rowdies after going down 1-0 in the third minute off of a header 2 header goals in that first half, one for Detroit in the 30 minute, one for the Rowdies in the 36th minute. Again, unlikely hero in this one. Zane Bubb getting his first goal and only his second game, I think, with the Rowdies. I think he got some minutes earlier this year. Yeah, kid looked passionate out there when he scored that goal. Oh, man.
He did. Yep.
The stadium was lightly attended on this one, but, man, this guy fired up the crowd that was there. It was good to see. Plenty of chances, honestly, in that first half. A few missed ones for the Rowdies. Cal Jennings alone had 2 really good looks in on goal. Some good saves from the Detroit keeper, though. Going into the second half, it was a bit of a mishmash of chaos. There were 3 goals in this one, 2 unfortunately for Detroit and 1 for your Rowdies late on in this one. It'd be Morris for Detroit that got 2 goals in the 58th minute and the 74th minute off of some wacky play in that 58th minute. And then later on the 74th minute to sort of put this one out of reach. Yeah, kids got some minutes later on as well. By the way, Andrew Musali got some minutes. Looked, fine out there. Some of these other kids got minutes. Yeah, it was a tough one. Arteaga would score late in this one, in the 93rd minute. Again, 3rd minute of stoppage time, kind of late to do much. Still pushed, credit to the team on that one. Once they got that goal, it seemed like there was a little boost of confidence. And maybe, some good time wasting from Detroit interfered with what could have been a good Rowdies comeback. Nonetheless, Rowdies lose this one 3-2 after digging ourselves into an early hole in this game. Very early hole in the 3rd minute. And then in that second half, going down by 2 goals by the 75th minute. It's not where you want to be. Yeah, we looked all right, James. I think that first half especially, we looked good considering how early we conceded. We can talk about this more in a little bit. But yeah, there's some things to talk about here. I think the finishing wasn't as up to par as we'd like to see, maybe.
Right.
Chance creation was there. Like, there was opportunities. And certainly just some mishmash defending at the back with the sort of plug and play situation we had with Zane Bubb, Kleeman, Manjoma. Yeah, Kleeman came out late in this one. I believe it was, let me fact check myself. It was Leo Fernandez that would come in for him. Obviously, Leo Fernandez is not a defender. We're pushing for goals at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it really was. Yeah, I mean, you talked to a lot of the players on this team, and after the game on Saturday, which I'll let you talk about in a minute here, everybody mentions how dynamic the team is. Tons of different players that can play in different positions, which is good and bad. I mean, it's good. It's good to have players that can do that, but you don't want to be in a situation where you have to do that all the time. It seems like we've had to do that a little bit more than we'd like, especially going into this game on Saturday, where, again, I'll let you talk about it in a second, but that back line was interesting. It was interesting mishmash back there on that back line. Yeah, Spalding had a good game in this one. Could have put a goal in to take the lead, I think, right? Yeah, he could have put in a goal to take the lead when we were tied 1-1 in that first half, hit the post, I believe. It was a weird one, James. We dropped points here. This team I think we should have beat. But at least we can say we beat a team that I mean, I'm not gonna spoil the result of this Miami game. If we had lost that game against Miami, what did I say? I would jump in the Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I think we said if we dropped points at all against Miami, I would jump in the Bay. And I think it was a little closer than I would have liked, but certainly not one that I thought we were ever really in trouble in. But James, before we break it down anymore, tell us a little bit about what happened in that Miami game. Then we'll go back, kind of break these down game by game.
Well, we'll start with Detroit here, let me do the quick recap, like you said. But then we'll start with the Detroit questions. So, the quick recap for the game from Saturday was Jordan Farr, Eddie Manjoma, Freddie Kleeman, and Blake Bodley at the back. Again, like you said, not what we expected.
Yeah.
Pacific Nyangabire, Lewis Hilton, Danny Crisostomo, and Ryan Spalding were the written down midfielders. Not all of those always lined up in the midfield or in a straight line of 4, of course. Damian Rivera, Manu Arteaga, and Cal Jennings up top. And that is effectively how it broke down. But again, there were changes in the lineup as the game went along. So, yeah, there was no jumping in the Bay for us, Carlos. You had already mentioned that it was probably closer than we wanted. There were a lot of chances for both teams, actually, in looking over the highlights again, but we were able to break through and get that win. I'll do a quick standings update before we return to both of these games after our 2-0 win. Additionally, this weekend, we saw Hartford beat Louisville City. We saw Charleston smash Orange County. That was a very interesting scoreline. And the Switchbacks lost. That will be not exactly relevant for this weekend, but it will be relevant to our next game, which we will talk about next week. So in the East, Louisville City stayed top with 53 points from 24 games because they lost. Charleston had 52 points from 26 games, and we have 43 from our 25, which puts us currently in third. Although it should be noted, while we have a bye week, Detroit City is only 6 points behind us from the same number of games played. I guess that will also put us up with a game in hand again. I don't know why. This is the schedule and how it's broken down, but Carlos, you and I don't have any control over that, unfortunately. It might be a little
magic of the USL.
Yeah, it might be a little more even if it were up to someone who isn't an algorithm, I'm assuming.
Sure.
But over in the Western Conference, New Mexico's win put them on top with 48 points from 24 games. Sacramento have 41 points from the same number of games played. Memphis have 39 points from their 26, while Oakland are 2 points back and with a game in hand. That is how it all broke down. So, Carlos, usually when we get to our questions, we break it down into halves. We will obviously do the games here. Let's start with the first one, Detroit City. And give me your broad takes on this, and then we'll get deeper into the nitty gritty of it.
Look at Oakland go, by the way. Good for them, 4th place.
Ever since they changed coaches.
Yeah. You know what it was? The Dom Dwyer effect. That's who changed the game for Oakland Roots. I'll tell you what. Anyway, from Dom Dwyer to Tampa Bay, there's a connection there, right? He played for USF.
He did.
There's a jump there. Okay.
Good call.
Anyway, more importantly, the Rowdies. Wednesday, Detroit in Tampa Bay. In a steamy one, nobody in attendance. I was still wearing kind of like my work fit. So were a lot of folks, and we didn't play well. We played all right. We should have won, right? I think, unfortunately, Jordan Farr didn't have his best night. I think our back line didn't have our best night. Midfield kind of allowed for a lot of like open chance creation for Detroit, which I didn't really think would happen. Detroit, by the way, is not a particularly strong offensive team.
No.
And we've seen that this year. They scored 3 goals on us, which is not like, you don't want any team scoring 3 goals on you. I didn't expect Detroit to put 3 goals on us at all. Just completely honest. I mean, obviously, like there's the bias of me always saying we're going to win every game no matter what. But Detroit should not have scored 3 goals on us. Like that's just the reality of it. On top of that, if you're going to let a team score 3 goals on you, at least finish your chances, right? We didn't do that. Cal Jennings had a couple that he could have put away. The one that haunts me to this day is in the second half, Pacific Nyangabire, open look on the right side of the net, on the right side of the box. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking back at the highlights again. It was Arteaga that fed it to him. Nyangabire, I mean, it's not going to be an easy finish. Don't get me wrong. He's got to smash it. Oh, man, he shoots it wide. Yeah, it just goes wide. Almost hits the ball boy behind the net. Like it wasn't a good one. So, yeah, I mean, you're looking at the first goal, right? Let's start the first goal for Detroit. Corner kick, nothing crazy. It's a corner kick. We know what set pieces are. We know how they work, right? We have pretty big guys in the back that should be able to handle that.
That's what we assume.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Guillen reacts pretty slowly to Emu Mensah moving. Kleeman doesn't have anybody he's marking either in the midfield or in the middle of the box. And he kind of reacts slowly to Emu Mensah freeing up as well. So the combo there to be thrown around of a little bit of blame there. Just not great reaction time there, honestly. I don't really know how else to put it. They fell asleep. Emu Mensah was wide open by the time that ball got to him. Easy header for him. 1-0 Detroit. Literally 3 minutes into the game. I mean, in a stadium that was struggling to kind of like have any sort of energy to it on the night, especially after kind of like the recent little bumpy results, right? It was an ugly goal to let up early on. Frustrating because it kind of took the air out of the stadium. What air there was in the stadium. Ralph's mob went quiet. Everybody was kind of quiet, and it was just like, okay, well, here we go again.
Yeah.
Or that it's going to be another bad night. In these last like these last few games had been. Again, Guillen goes down like 5 minutes later. So there's that, right? I mean, we don't have one of our best defenders anymore. He's out of the game. Zane Bub plugs in, and we're like, okay, well, we don't know much about this kid, but Zane Bub's in the game now, and now we're gonna have to rely on him to hold not allow any more goals. He had a shaky start, like wasn't really feeling it early on when he came into the game. Sort of passed it, just wasn't making the right passes, wasn't making a smart decision every once in a while. Luckily, nothing too like crucial led to a goal. But certainly just not feeling it when he came into the game. And I don't think that instilled much confidence in me either when I was watching this one play out. Inevitably, as I start saying, man, this kid does not look good out there, he scores a goal like 20 minutes later and ties the game, right? Because that's just how it goes. That's how it goes. So we're tied 1-1.
Wish that we could harness that and use it to our benefit.
Yeah, right. Maybe I should just kind of like speak things into existence, or like the opposite of things into existence. That kind of works. Whatever. Point being, that first half, he came back into the game, settled in, he scored that goal, got really pumped up about it. Love to see that. Broadly, a couple good looks in that first half. Freddie Kleeman had a really good looking header off of a set piece that just went wide entirely. He's by himself. He should have put that away, honestly, with his size. He should be putting that goal away. There was a look from Ryan Spalding in that first half. That's the one that hit the post, I believe. Detroit gets back into it with their second goal later on in the game, and early on in the first half. And from there, it kind of seems that we start to slow down.
Yeah.
Once Detroit gets that second goal. Because we had a few more looks. Cal Jennings had a good look in the end of that first half. He was very much wide open one-on-one, tries to chip the keeper. Detroit keeper makes a nice save, parries it away. Again, come out pretty strong in the second half, I would say. Maybe like one good look. I don't know. But it would be Detroit that capitalizes on their chance in that one. The Ben Morris goal, a really wacky one. If you go back and look at it, there's just a lot of chaos. I don't even think they know what they were doing here. They were just kind of kicking it forward until it landed at Ben Morris's feet. I couldn't tell you who made that first shot. But Jordan Farr makes a decent save, bounces out to Ben Morris, and he's got a wide open lane. 2-1 Detroit. And that's kind of, again, like I said, that's where it slows down. Ben Morris gets another goal in the 75th minute. And from there, we just kind of struggled to get back into it. He was wide open. Kleeman reacted very slowly on this one again. It's unfortunate because I feel like he has so much talent, and he seems to be reacting a little too slow. He's a little too slow to get on the end of crosses or balls into the middle. With his size, like he has the tools to be like really, really good. And it's not really there right now for him for whatever reason. Just the way I've seen it play out. Detroit goes up 3-1. Again, not like a ton for us after that until that goal later on. Endry Mustali, by the way, gets a decent look actually, which is kind of fun. I thought he was going to get his first goal. But yeah, it was Manu Arteaga that would get us kind of back in the game. You call that back in the game? I mean, it was the 93rd minute. There were 6 minutes left. It was a lovely finish. And by the way, guess who passed it to him? It was Damian Rivera. I mean, this kid's been a beast all season when he comes off the bench. And when he doesn't come off the bench, as we'll talk about against Miami. But Arteaga, man, fantastic finish in this one. Needed a little more of that finishing from our forwards throughout the game. And maybe it would have been a battle. But again, if you concede 3 goals at home, it's always going to be tough to score. Yep. To win at home.
Well, both.
Yeah. So I don't know. With 2 goals, I think I'm usually pretty comfortable at home, right? 2 goals feels like it usually will give us a win at home. And this one, the back line wasn't really there. Again, a little bit plug and play with Zane Bub. Felt like he had a decent game once he settled in, actually. Felt like he had a really good game once he settled in. Midfield allowing for too much freedom for Detroit to move up and down the field. They win this one 3-2. And again, a game that I thought was very winnable. I think you thought it was very winnable. Detroit should not have scored 3 goals on us. They don't really have an attacking threat like that. Ben Morris is, with all due respect, frankly, like not that great. He hasn't been in particularly good form, and he just kind of popped off today and scored 2 against the Rowdies. I mean, it's literally been Maxi Rodriguez that's been their main attacking threat.
It has.
Like that's like he's a good player. He's fine. He shouldn't be scoring all the goals for the team, and he has. And all of a sudden, Ben Moore steps in, has a great game, and I think it's because we allowed him to more than anything. With all due respect to Ben Morris, I mean, he seems like a good enough player, but he just had a lot of space on both his goals, and he shouldn't have had that much space. Like, I mean, any decent striker puts away those opportunities that he had. So I think that's the frustrating part. So 3-2, Detroit wins. We drop points again. Going on a ramble here, but that's very, very 10,000 feet altitude look at this one. Wasn't great. Not defending well, not finishing our chances. And by the way, we had chances. Like, again, you look at the FOTMob stats, I think they show you the story of this one. It's pretty even. 28 total shots, by the way, for the Rowdies. Only 5 of which were on target. So make of that what you will. 4 big chances, according to FOTMob. 3 of those were missed. Obviously, the Artiaga one put away at the end of the game was very lovely. And 9 corners in this one, too. So I think that's pretty interesting a number to point out, too. 9 corners. Ever since Lasso ever since Lasso went down, I don't think we've scored a corner. Scored off of a corner kick. That might be
until Zane Bubs.
Until Zane Bub, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, again, unlikely hero and Zane Bub to score that corner kick. I want a little more from Freddie Kleeman. Like, as overall, like in the back line, he can be really good. In the attack, he has the potential to like be very, very good because he's mobile, he's athletic, he can get up there. And his headers haven't really been on point, despite having good looks. He's had good looks. Man, like we need someone to step up like that on those set pieces because we're creating a lot of them. In most games, we're creating a lot of set pieces. And if we're not going to finish particularly well, we're going to need some set piece goals if we want any chance of winning these big games coming up. Yeah, that stop me before I keep rambling, James, because there's a lot to talk about here, and I think I got most of it off my chest in the last like 3-4 minutes.
Well, yeah. I mean, you did cover all of the stuff that went into the game, and I just kind of want to break it down a little bit more as to what I saw with the passages of play. Real quick quote as well from Rowdies manager Robbie Nielsen, because there we go. Here it is. When you have days like that, when you don't score, the opposition start to get a feel that it's maybe going to be their day. I think if we'd scored the first goal, it's a totally different game. We're just going through that wee period right now where it's super frustrating. So obviously, yes, it is super frustrating and everybody can relate to that portion of it. But at the same time, it also is something that I think a lot of fans can understand, the idea that actually, I'll just go back to a quote from the person who used to be on this podcast with me, Leo Santos. He said, if you don't score, you allow the other team to score. It's a truism that is probably true in all sports, but it's also especially true in soccer because soccer is a low scoring sport. In basketball, you're going to score some number of points if you get to a professional level or high enough level. But yeah, so here, if we don't score, then obviously we are still giving the other team an opportunity to get themselves into the game, even to take the lead. And we're going to get to that a little bit more when we talk about Miami and how they hit the post. But beforehand, with Devin Amumensa scoring immediately, that already put us in a hole because we have been having a lot of trouble recently putting the ball into the back of the net ourselves. And that's obviously unfortunate. But the first half was generally played very well. We were able to break down Detroit and break down their lines of defense kind of frequently. Ryan Spalding, it seemed like, was on the verge of creating some Spalding sanity quite a few times. I have in my notes, which is what I've been reading all up to now, trying to refamiliarize with myself with the game. Ryan Spalding had 3 or 4 corner kicks by the time that Zane Bub had scored his goal. Like, he created them, I should say.
Yeah.
He didn't take them. He created these chances. And it was because he was just able to continually get past the Detroit City defense. But the problem was either our finish was saved or it was defended well enough that it was just kicked out for a corner kick in the first place. But
Yeah.
yeah, we did so well and we put ourselves in all of these positions where we could have scored, and then frequently we didn't. We obviously did get the goal off of a corner kick, but as you mentioned, Carlos, that's not something that we can rely on game in, game out, because we have been scoring those so infrequently. So if we want to create chances, obviously the best way to do that is through the run of play. Through the run of play, get somebody on the end of these balls that are coming in frequently from Ryan Spalding, previously from Blake Bodley and Pacific Nyongabire, and eventually put those away. If we're not scoring, at the very least, the other thing that we have to do is be very stout defensively. And that's where the Rowdies have also not been showing up recently. So this takes us back to what you were saying in relation to Aaron Guillen goes down in the first, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it was.
He went off in the 7th minute. I have the FOD mob right.
Yeah. So we did actually, luckily, get him. Well, no, he wasn't starting for the Miami game either. So that might be a longer term problem. We hope, obviously, that he and Jordan Doherty are back sooner rather than later. But luckily, they do have the bye week that we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, Freddie Kleeman, you've already talked about him. We do need him to step up on the back line, not only because he's been a more ever present force because of the injuries that we've just been facing, but also because he is a bigger body out there, especially on corner kicks. That's where we give up a goal in the first 3 minutes. That's really not acceptable.
Get out there, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
We can't be doing that. If we had such a good first half, by and large. Obviously, we should have scored more than the one goal, but that's where we fell apart in this game overall. I do agree with Robbie Nielsen. Unfortunately, we give up the goal in the 3rd minute. We're already down in that hole. We're already fighting, and then we can only get the one goal in the first half, and that's just not good enough either because we created so many chances. The other one that I was so annoyed about was Ryan Spalding's shot that came off the inside of the post, and the next person to touch the shot after Ryan Spalding hit it was also Ryan Spalding. It came back. It was literally a direct line at the post and then back at him. Like, the physics on that are ridiculous, but it's unfortunate that we can't hit all of these. We can't keep missing all of these shots. And then if we're going to keep missing all of these shots, we've at least got to be better defensively. It's honestly a two-way street of the Rowdies not performing to the level that we need. And Carlos, you and I had talked many times over the course of this season about how the Rowdies were dropping points away from home. And as much as that is true, we have obviously dropped many points away from home. I don't think that we have dropped many more points away from home compared to the other teams that are in our bracket, let's say, that are closer to the top of the table on both the Eastern and the Western Conference side. As an example, this past weekend, Louisville City just lost to Hartford. That's a weird one. That's a weird one. And I don't remember what our result was against Hartford away, but I know we didn't lose at the very least. So it's just when we're home, these are the games versus Loudoun United, versus Detroit City, versus the Miami. We should be beating the Miami into the dust at this point in this season. And I'm not trying to say that disrespectfully. The gulf between the two teams.
I am.
Carlos is. The gulf between the two teams is massive. And the fact that we could only score in the second half is problematic. It stems from the goal scoring problems that we saw against Detroit City and against Loudoun United, where we got shut out. I don't want to continue to break down all of the Detroit City stuff overall, because we're gonna do bigger questions after we do the Miami breakdown. But suffice it to say, when Detroit City switch up their lineup in the second half, just change things up a little bit so that they can match us a little bit better in our attacking positions, all of a sudden, a lot of our chances dried up. And if we didn't score enough in the first half, which obviously we did not, then we're allowing Detroit City to get into this game and put themselves in a position where they can win, which they did. Yeah. So all of that is where we found ourselves with a problem. And we're going to return to this. But Carlos, let's do our man of the match, and then we'll do the Miami bigger recap, and then we'll talk about, let's talk about all 3 games that happen in the 8-day period beforehand, and we'll do that in a bigger sense.
Yeah. Also, by the way, we're about halfway. We're 34 minutes into our podcast right now. If you're joining us live, as always, throw in some replies, throw in some comments. What are you thinking about this one? Again, you know me, I'm frustrated about this one. Drop some comments. Tell us what you're thinking about this Detroit game. I'm curious to see what people are thinking about the Miami game in particular, because I think we'll jump into it in just a second here. I think my kind of feelings on the Miami one are a little all over the place. Obviously, we won, but like you said, maybe we should have won by more. It was, and Miami had their chances. Again, we'll jump into that in just a second. So, throw in what you're thinking in the replies and the YouTube comments and Twitter replies, Instagram, whatever you're watching on. I don't know if we're like somehow like streaming this with smoke signals or something, like maybe, use like a little mirror and like flash it with a sign, like Morse code or something. We'll figure out a way to break it down. That being said, James, I'll tell you my man of the match for this one. It was pretty easy for me for this one. It was Zane Bub. I mean, you kidding me? This kid, I don't like, regardless of how he kind of like took him a few minutes to settle into this one. Great game from him. Offensively, obviously scored the goal, which is incredible to do as a defender that early on in your professional career in a game like this where you needed a goal to come back and start really feeling, yourself as a team. He did that, and he sparked in a lot of energy into that stadium, into that team with like the passion he showed after he scored that goal. It was a lot of intangible stuff as well that I think you could see from him. And once he scored that goal, man, he looked like a different beast. Like he was locked in. He had a great game. I wouldn't say he made a ton of mistakes after that. He settled in and he looked good, and he looked like a good depth piece in the back, which is what we expected him to be this year. Or did we? I don't even know. We didn't really know anything about this kid, right? We just knew he played for UCF, and the Rowdies thought he was good enough to give him a professional contract. And my dog's walking over because she has her thoughts on Zane Bub. I don't know if you can hear a little click clack of her nails over there. But yeah, I mean, this kid looks like serious talent, and that's great. I think he showed that this game, and deserves a shout out because he's been working back from injury. He couldn't even really get minutes at the beginning of the year, even if he wanted to, even if the Rowdies wanted him to, because he was coming back from injury. It looks like he's come back pretty strong. So respect to him. Fantastic goal. Way to get up there for the header. Let's get more of that from everybody on our team.
Yeah, I actually probably would have preferred to see more of him in the game versus the Miami, because that's a game that we're expecting to win, as we just mentioned, and we will probably mention more than a few times coming up. But either way, good for him getting his first goal. That is always a good weight off of your back. My man of the match for this one was Ryan Spalding. He was incredible in his first game back for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and I thought that he immediately showed a lot of the potential that we saw him hit last season in his pretty short stint with us, because he did so well that New England Revolution were like, okay, let's get this guy back. So I'm not sure exactly how long it'll last. Obviously, this time around, we're hopeful that it will be for the rest of Ryan Spalding's career, because he looks great in these colors. And I just hope that, honestly, we need to get more people on the end of his chances, because he created those 4 corner kicks in the first half, at least, if not more. I would need to go back and get exactly how frequently that happened, but
it was insane.
Yeah, he looked really good. So glad to see him back here, and we will talk about Ryan Spalding again when we hit the Miami game. But beforehand, I do want to say we have been nominated this year. Again, this is the 3rd year in a row that we have been nominated, in fact, for Creative Loafing's Best of the Bay. Obviously, we are in the podcast section. Now, we need your help to help us win the best podcast in Creative Loafing's whole competition here. There is a link in the description, or you can check out the pinned tweet at RBLR Sports on Twitter. Wherever you are, I'm sure that you can find it from our social media very easily, and Carlos is pointing to it on our feed here. You can create an account with Creative Loafing, and once you've done that, you can literally vote every single day. Saturday is the last day to vote, so please do so before Saturday. If you help us out, then we can hopefully win the best podcast of the whole of Tampa Bay, and we will be crowned that way by Creative Loafing. That would be really cool. Creative Loafing obviously is an awesome magazine, and they cover a lot of different stuff. So, or at least an online publication, but either way, they do cover a lot of cool stuff. And this would be another way that we can add to the cool stuff that they talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Shout out Creative Loafing. There's good stuff on there for sure. And shout out Jim Clash 3 Row on Instagram. I think Nate Worth played very well starting against Detroit City. Yeah, Jim Class Hero. Jim Class Hero. I love that username. My goodness, I'm so tired. He took me a minute to figure out how to, I'm so tired, James. Yeah, Nate Worth did have a good game against Detroit, by the way, too. I thought he was fine in the middle. He started, by the way. That was interesting. He's been getting some serious minutes, man. And against him in a big game too. I mean, it's really interesting to see how Robbie Nielsen trusts these kids. He's getting full-time starts in these ones.
I think that we expected to see him more against Miami as opposed to the start against Detroit. So
yeah, I would agree for sure. But man, the kid looks good. These kids, Christian Ortiz, Nate Worth, Andrew Mustali, all three of these kids, man, they don't look out of place. You know what I mean? You can see a kid out there. The kid looks 17, right? And admit Nate Worth looks on the younger side. I'll give you that, but he doesn't look uncomfortable out there. He looks like he's fully in the game. Same thing with Christian Ortiz and Andrew Mustali, man. These kids step on the field, and especially Andrew Mustali, obviously, because his height. Christian Ortiz is on the bigger side too. He's got some height to him. These kids look like imposing. Damn, it's impressive stuff. And I understand why Robin Nielsen trusts these kids. They're good. They're good for sure. Shout out Andrew Mustali too, by the way. I took a picture at the end of the game against Miami, which we'll talk about here in a minute. He was out there after the game, way after the game. I'd done the press conference down below the stadium with Robbie Nielsen, Ryan Spalding, and Damian Rivera, and way after the game, we're talking 40 minutes, 50 minutes, maybe an hour after the game. Andrew Mustali is out there taking pictures with the kid, signing autographs. Yeah, good kid, man. He literally looks like he's really enjoying his time with this club already. Okay, James, the Miami game. Again, I'm curious what people have to say about this one. So please share any thoughts about this game, because this one was we won. We got 3 points, which is what we wanted. It was really weird. It was the most unsatisfying 3 points we've had in a while.
That's probably fair,
because I don't think we played particularly well. And Robbie Nielsen said this as well, actually, when I was chatting with him after the game, down in the press conference we did. He noted that we might have had better games against some of these teams that we've lost to or drawn against in the last few games. But this was the one we won. Maybe because we finished our chances, maybe because we defended a little bit better. Maybe we got a little lucky with Miami hitting the post. And it's not something they'll say. It's certainly not something they'll say. I kind of pushed him maybe to say it. It's not something they're going to say. But Miami's also horrendous. I'm sorry. They're just a very bad team. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This might be one of the worst USL teams I've ever assembled. They're just really, really struggling to figure their vibe out. It's a very randomly put together team. They have a couple names that you might recognize, but other than that, they're just kind of figuring it out minute by minute. That's what it feels like. They're just kind of winging it, is what it looks like. And it almost worked for them, by the way, against this Rowdies team.
Yeah.
It almost worked for them. They had the more dangerous opportunities out of the two of us earlier on, I would say. I think in terms of the first dangerous look, it was Miami. They hit the post as well. Eventually, when we settled into it, we had a lot of chances, and we were holding onto the ball. We were pushing the ball upfield, and we weren't finishing well. James, tell me if you've heard that before. And this one in particular, I think it was much more noticeable because there's such a gap in talent that it felt like we should have been up a lot more goals than we were at halftime, which we weren't up. It was 0-0, right? Right? Yeah, we scored both the goals in the second half. Yeah. So this was a weird one. I was joking with my dad. I was there with my little cousins, my dad, and my grandpa. We're watching this one. The kids are getting rowdy. These kids love the Rowdies, man. Oh my God, they're so fun to watch. And then Ralph's mob. But when we scored that first goal, it was Arteaga that scored the first one, right? Or was it Damian Rivera?
The first goal was from The first goal was from Rivera,
Yeah,
and Arteaga
to
got it.
Arteaga. Yeah. By the way, that was fun of them. The duo assisted each other on both of their goals. Yeah, when Arteaga scored that first goal in the 61st minute, it was later in the game that I'd hoped to have scored against this team. I turned around to my dad and I'm like, I wasn't even celebrating. I was like, it was like relief, like I was,
Yeah.
I genuinely felt relieved for this team. Like we needed that goal really bad. We could not afford a 0-0 tie with the Miami FC at home. And that's what it felt like it was trending towards, honestly. After that first hour, I felt like it was trending towards a tie, which would have been problematic because I said on air that I would jump into the Bay if that happened. Thank God it didn't. Rivera would score 9 minutes later. 11 minutes later. I can't do math. And it would be assist from Arteaga. Damon Rivera, by the way, got the start in this one, like we said earlier. So he could start games, apparently, and play really well. He had a great game in this one, obviously. That being said, finishing, again, wasn't at 100%. Plenty of chances for this team. We could have been up, should have been up a lot more than we were by the end of this one. Certainly by the end of the half. I mean, I tied 0-0 at halftime, James. I can't lie to you. I was mildly concerned.
I can understand.
But again, a sense of relief when that first goal went in is the only way I could describe that. By the way, great attendance in this one. I don't have the number on, but like the stadium looked pretty good. I don't know if you have that number anywhere. Maybe you can find it like the ESPN app. But it looked like good attendance for this one, and I think that's great because, especially after coming off losses against Detroit and Loudoun, it's nice to see the fan base, still coming out strong for this one against the worst team in the league. I think truly it shows how much easier it is for people to get out there on a Saturday versus a Wednesday. But yeah, Rowdies win this one 2-0. James, tell me about what you think in this one. Kids got some minutes. I was hoping we'd get some more minutes from the kids in this one. I was hoping we'd be up like a lot more by the end of this game.
Yep.
We'd get some more minutes. Tell me what you think about this one. A positive result. 3 points. We are in third place. We're 10 points back from Louisville. It looks kind of tough to catch up to Louisville. Like, admittedly, it looks like, I've said that before. They dropped points against Hartford. I thought they'd be up by 13 points now. I didn't know they lost to Hartford, so that's kind of nice. We have a game against them and against Charleston coming up. You never know. I mean, we could go on a really good run in his last 9 games and make up ground, at least in Charleston. But it's going to be tough. Focusing back on this game, tell me how you thought this one played out, because we won. Like, we got the 3 points. But I know you and I have said maybe we wanted a little more out of this one.
Yes, for sure. We did want a little bit more out of this one. So the lineup was interesting from the start. Obviously, Aaron Guillen was out. This is something that you and I had just mentioned because of the Detroit City game. So Blake Bodley came in as the other center back. I thought that was interesting because Blake Bodley has struck me a lot more as an attacker first. Not that he's bad defensively, but obviously this is more of a defensive challenge than he would be used to. And I thought that Zane Bubb was kind of playing his way into the space where we would expect to see him at least get more minutes. I think he only got like 4+ minutes out of this game.
I thought he was getting the start in this one. Absolutely.
I thought he would have too, but
yeah.
For whatever reason, they went with Blake Bodley. So probably just to continue to get Blake Bodley fit. Also, we don't see what goes on in training naturally. So maybe that was just the way that they had prepared for this game. Additionally, Damian Rivera started up top. That is not something we've seen a lot. I believe it was only his second start of the whole campaign. And it's interesting because we have actually, Carlos, you and I talked about previously in a live show, somebody asked if they expected to see Damian Rivera starting more. And I said, I probably didn't expect to see him starting more because he is so effective in this role as a super sub. We play this game where the Rowdies are able to, especially at home, you would imagine, break teams down, get them running back and forth, side to side. And then by the second half, they're very tired because it's hot. It's Florida. If it's not Florida, it's still probably hot because it's been the summer and global warming, all that stuff. But, it's something that the team has been able to create these conditions where Damian Rivera comes on and his skill set, which is getting the ball at his feet, putting his head down, just running straight at defenders and putting them in an uncomfortable position in the last minutes of a game when they're already tired, that's very difficult to deal with. But I guess based off of the game versus Detroit City, where we were so good at creating chances in the first half, and that ultimately didn't lead to enough. And then we didn't really create as many chances, anywhere near as many chances in the second half. Robbie Nielsen thought we might as well start with Damian Rivera, and we might as well give him the chance to do that from the beginning, see how it works out. Honestly, obviously, it eventually worked out pretty well.
It worked.
Yeah, but the first half, we were doing something similar where if you go back and watch the highlights again here, the Rowdies created quite a few chances, did not get a goal off of those. It was another game where Pacific Nyangabire had what I would say is a pretty open goal
Oh my
chance
goodness.
that he could not get into the net.
Yeah.
So I guess that's 2 games in a row, but it's not like he's the only one either. Cal
No.
Jennings is in a bit of a drought right now. Manuel Arteaga has scored in 2 games in a row. Thank God for that, because it seems we need to have at least somebody who is in the position to be scoring. I thought Andrew Mustali or Christian Ortiz would get a lot more minutes in this game, where maybe they could get a goal, and that would have been awesome. I am waiting for both of them to get their first goal, their first professional goal. It would be.
I thought this one for sure would be the one where we see one of them get the goal. Like,
Yeah,
against
yeah.
I fully thought we'd be up by like a couple of goals by halftime. Get the kids some minutes, see what they can do. Yeah. Sorry, that was what I was more disappointed by than anything else. And we just couldn't see, like, yeah, I feel like it was a waste of opportunity on that front. But sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're correct. I mean, ultimately, it was a wasted opportunity, and maybe that comes down to how tight the score was. With us being as ineffective going forward as we have been recently, this is not to say that the team doesn't have talent. This is not to say that the team can't get there. We've obviously seen there was a moment in the season, like through the month of April, I think it was, that Cal Jennings and Manuel Arteaga were almost in a scoring competition with each other. It seemed like. I know that
Back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. I know that they would probably say that each of them encourages each other, but it looked like they were going back and forth with each other to see who could get the most. And unfortunately, that has dried up. But we need to get back to that point. So, how do we do that next if we're unable to get all these goals? Like I said, the other thing is then we at least have to be stingy defensively, and that has been a problem too. Forrest Lasso went down in, was it May? And he tore his ACL. So we're not going to get him back until probably May of 2025, somewhere around there. Freddie Kleeman has come in, and we've seen a lot of Eddie Manjoma actually in a lot of different positions. He's a bit of an Iron Man for this team, along with Lewis Hilton, because Manjoma has just filled in so many different spots. But we have not had the consistency on the back, not only in terms of the lineup recently, but also even more so probably, we have not had the consistency in terms of the form. And you've got to have at least one or the other. If we're not defending well enough, then we should, by God, be scoring as many goals as we can to get past these teams. So we're not scoring, then we need to be defensively strong enough to hold them out. And that's where it seems stupid to just put it in those terms. But ultimately, it does come down to that. If we're not good enough attacking wise and we're not good enough defensively, then yes, we're going to be in this position that we're in right now. That's very reductive here. But something needs to, if we're going to be in the Detroit City, I think, is a very good game for this, to kind of draw this example out a little bit more.
Yeah.
The first half, we were doing very well. We obviously gave up a goal very early on, and that puts us in a position where, again, our heads are down a little bit. We're looking like, oh man, is this going to be another one of those games? Ryan Spalding, I think, is doing a lot of great stuff. He's come into the locker room probably with all the energy that he did last season, and he's making the team look good. And in that first half, we were creating a lot of chances. Unfortunately, the only one that we could score was off of a dead ball and a set piece, and not off of all of the open play chances that we had built up until that point. So we go into the second half, and Detroit City is able to change up their lineup, just like I had mentioned before, and suddenly they're right back in the game. We're not doing as well in terms of our attacking ability, and they can score. This could have been the exact same thing against Miami. we saw them hit the post, and there was another one that Jordan Farr had to stretch all the way to his left.
Did a
And
really good look in that first half.
yeah, those were
Really good look.
2 chances where Miami could have been the team that, just like Detroit, had gone ahead, and then suddenly we're in the same hole. So, yeah, the point is finding the change that we can move from this section of the season and get to the next section where we're not in all of these we're not in all of these different types of droughts. We're not in a goal scoring drought. We're not in a I guess we're not in a clean sheet drought, even though we got one this past Saturday. Hopefully that's the first one, right? Hopefully that's the first of many. If we can stop all of these different problems happening at the same time, then I think ultimately the team is going to work themselves back into a position where they're all working together and doing well and playing with better form. But maybe it's the clean sheet this past weekend that'll help us out. It'll give us a little bit of a boost. I don't know if you could just say that other teams put away those chances that Miami didn't, but the team have an extra week now to recuperate and hopefully get back from a couple of injuries, hopefully sit down and look at themselves and try to say, hey, what is going on with our inability to score, our inability to defend, and how can we overcome both of these? Because that is what doomed us over the course of 8 days and only got us 3 points that maybe we were lucky to get away with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's frustrating. I think looking ahead, there's only 9 games left, right? In this regular season, we are again 10 points back from Louisville. Charleston is not much further ahead. They are, I was wrong. Charleston's 9 points ahead. We have a game in hand on that front, and we played both of those teams towards the end of the year. Charleston's coming up sooner rather than later, actually. That'll be a big one. I don't think it'll take much for this, for us to kind of like find our mojo again. Robbie Nielsen firmly believes that we haven't been playing like bad either. Like, and I would tend to agree with him. When the chance creation is there, like
exactly,
and it's not even like look, we are these last 2 games. These 2 games this week, we scored 4 goals. Averaging 2 goals a game isn't really bad. It's actually solid. It's pretty solid. But I think it's because we had so many more chances that it kind of left a sour taste in our mouth, right? We maybe wanted a little more from our guy, Cal Jennings, right? Who is a stellar forward, and we've seen him in action and scoring goals in bunches. Maybe he's one of those guys that kind of scores goals in bunches. And maybe that's coming up soon. And hopefully it does, because, again, we're coming up towards the end of the year. Realistically, can we catch up to Louisville? Who knows? I mean, it's going to be a tough run for sure. We have that game against them over there. Maybe they have a little bit of a few, more dropped points coming up. We could go on a really great run in these last 9 games and somehow pull that one off. More importantly, looking at the playoffs, we're going to have big games, obviously, against teams like Detroit pretty early on in this one. Actually, Detroit would have been the team I think we played in that first round of the playoffs before we played them on Wednesday. Had the season ended like on that day. So the type of teams we're going to play early on in the playoffs is a team like Detroit, and they're good enough to beat you if you're not on your A game, which clearly we weren't. And we're going to have to obviously get by those Detroit-esque teams to get to the Louisvilles and the Charlestons later on. Obviously, we have to get better a little bit away if we want to win those games in the playoffs away. But again, 9 games away, still a little bit far out from now. We're talking about late October into November. Hopefully we're there and we're in a good position by the time playoffs come around. I'm not asking to be in first place in the entire league by the time we start the playoffs. But I'm asking us to kind of like find our form again. If we find our mojo with how good this team is, like on paper, man, like if we're in the right mindset, we're finishing our chances. And if guys like Guillen and Doherty are back from injury, which hopefully they are after this week of I think it's officially a mental health week is what they called it, right. Which is kind of nice, which works out because on the physical side, you can rest up too. So hopefully Guillen and Doherty can rest up a bit. Actually, I saw Guillen after the game in the Miami game in the parking lot. Left pretty late from that one. Saw him walking out and had exchanged a couple quick words with him, checked in on him, seeing how he's doing. He looked good. He was walking on his own power. Like he said, he's getting better, quicker. Or he said he's feeling good, is what he said. He said he's feeling good. So hopefully that means he's coming back sooner rather than later. It's a hard-hitting frontline journalism from me right after the game in the parking lot. So yeah, I mean, if we get those guys back, if we find our mojo, like truly, like there's no reason to like start doubting this team yet. Like there's too many good players. Robbie Nielsen's a good enough coach. Yeah, I don't think we'll be in this little like I don't even know if I call it a slump. It's only a few games in the grand scheme of things. It's a little more noticeable because Louisville kind of pulls away, Charleston pulls away. I think that's a little more frustrating. It feels like more, right? So hopefully we kind of figure that out. I think we'll be all right, truly. Like I'm not particularly concerned. It's just a little frustrating kind of seeing these shaky performances, I would say, back to back. So we'll see. Maybe to back like 4 games, 5 games, whatever. Too much talent on this team to be concerned for me. Wish we got more points. Disappointing, but I think this week came at a really good time. Despite winning our last game, I think this week came at a really good time, and I think it'll benefit us hugely. So we'll see where we're at next week.
Well, the last thing that we have then, Carlos, is we've talked, I think, both of these games to death. We've probably covered them in the large, the small, every which way that you can, but we are missing the man of the match for the Miami game. I'm pretty sure anyone who's watching or listening could figure out who they are, but just to be sure, Carlos, who is your man of the match?
Oh, yeah. My man of the match is easily Damian Rivera. Kid's a dog, man. And you got to remember, he's still young, too. He's only, 21, 22? I think he's 22. But he comes in and plays with such like level of cool-headed confidence. Like he never really shows like too much emotion. Just kind of goes in there and just like thugs it out. Just absolute dog. Like puts his head down and does it. Yeah, and him and Arteaga linked up beautifully. Nice little 1-2 with Arteaga for his goal later on. Lovely pass into Arteaga, who's kind of playing as a target man in that first goal he scored. It just kind of bodies off some Miami defenders. Yeah, they linked up really well. He mentioned in my chat with him, I asked him a couple questions in the press conference after. I asked him, just about that duo with Arteaga in this one. He let me know that Arteaga had told him, like they play him off the bounce, right? And that's what he did. Like they talked about that specifically pregame, going into this one to work off of each other. And they did it very, very well in this one. Damian Rivera, man, this kid's got a bright future. Lovely super sub. Obviously seems to do the role of starter pretty well too. So great game from him.
Yep. You get a goal and an assist. Obviously, you're in a pretty good shot for man of the match. And to that end, my man of the match is Manuel Arteaga. He was the other person with a goal and an assist in this game. Just like you said, Carlos, they were playing off each other as they had planned to do and were working on beforehand. So the only thing unfortunate that we couldn't have gotten more goals because I think that there were plenty of chances, just like there were against Detroit and probably like there were against Loudoun. I'm forgetting exactly how all of that game went, but as you said, there are pieces there. It's all about getting the execution down on both sides, the attacking side and the defensive side. And Manuel Arteaga at least has scored 2 goals in 2 games. He's got an assist. He is looking pretty good at this point. So I'm really happy that one of our strikers who is starting all of these games is getting out there and is still feeling in the right vein. He's still feeling himself, so to speak. So good stuff there. Carlos, let's move into our extra time segment. I will actually do these in reverse order because I'm more excited about the last one than I am any of the others. But Christian Ortiz has now been called up to the senior Dominican national team, folks. That is the top level national team. He was just playing with their U20s last month. We interviewed him about that, I think also earlier this month. So if you haven't, please check out that interview. It is up on our YouTube, obviously, and wherever else, whichever other podcast we included that in. But regardless, I am super excited for him. Christian Ortiz is this is somebody that you have talked about as being a player who doesn't look out of place amongst men. He is 17 and he looks like he is the same size as all of them, not only height, but width. He's very strong. And I think that he's going to be a very good attacker because he's got the build to hold players off the ball and he can also get a good shot off. He was so close to scoring in whichever game that was that I stood up and I was I was already running halfway down the aisle that I was in, expecting the goal to go in. It was so close. And I'm sure he's going to get one of those sooner than later. And I'm super happy for him in the meantime, though, that he is already getting looks from the senior side for the Dominican Republic. That's very exciting. And as I mentioned with him during that interview, the Dominican Republic overall is looking up in soccer. It's all very exciting there, and everything is positive. We're happy.
Yeah, cool stuff. That's really fun. I'm gonna have to keep up with that going forward. Speaking of Tampa Bay youth, Santiago Castaneda, James, his Paderborn side in the second Bundesliga are at the top of the league after 3 games, and he's getting good minutes over there. That's fun stuff. Good for him. Good for the Rowdies to send a kid like that to Germany and see him have some success over there. Yeah, keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on his career. Santiago Castaneda, good player in the midfield. Yeah, keep an eye on him. Good stuff coming for him. Good stuff coming for Paderborn, hopefully. Maybe we see him in the in the Bundesliga just within a few years of leaving the Rowdies. Can you imagine?
Crossing fingers, toes, arms, legs.
Yeah. Everything. James, one more piece. Actually, I have a couple more things here. Lexington, by the way, is going to make the jump to the championship. Lexington SC, after being in League One in their time as a team, in a brand new stadium too. By the way, that's pretty cool. They're gonna have a new stadium in Lexington, Kentucky. Kind of random, but like cool. So
it should be noted as well. There, as far as I'm aware, they should be opening that stadium against the Tampa Bay Sun in the USL Super League.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I've heard. So that'll be fun. Keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on that stadium. More soccer in traditionally like overlooked soccer communities. I'm happy for that. Yeah, that's gonna grow the game. And yeah, cool stuff. More stadiums, the better. Lastly, by the way, if you're listening to this live and we're ending at a good time, I think in exactly 12 minutes, Indy 11 kicks off against Sporting Kansas City in the U.S. Open Cup semifinals. If I'm not mistaken, which I think I'm not, if Indy 11 wins this game, don't they sneak into like a continental tournament? Is that what I read? Like because LAFC won, like Indy 11 winning sneaks them into the Conca whatever. What is it called now?
The CONCACAF Champions Cup, I believe, but I don't know if that immediately gets them in just with this win.
I don't know.
I feel like I've seen stuff to that effect too, but I didn't read it yet.
Okay, fact check me on that. I'm like 90% sure that's the case, and I can't tell you why, but I think it's because whoever LAFC beat was like ahead of them. I don't know, whatever. Point being, Indy 11 could be in the U.S. Open Cup final. Last USL squad, obviously, still alive in this one. So we're all rooting for them. Obviously, Sebastian Gonzalez over there. Hopefully, he can take it all the way and get a cup with Indy 11. Why not? James, that's it for extra time. We're here at 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 44 seconds, 45 seconds, 46 now. Yeah, James, I think it's a good place to start to wrap it up, right?
Yep. Thank you, listeners and watchers, for tuning in. Our audience, wherever you are, we appreciate that you have joined us today or tomorrow if you're listening via the podcast. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere at RBLR Sports. That is how you can interact with us. I am mostly on Twitter at RBLR James K, or you can use the hashtag AskRBLR if you are not interacting with us while we're live. Carlos, where are you?
At Carlos CPA 10 on Twitter, where you can see me spew my USL propaganda. Yeah, Tom DePinto, by the way, fact checked us. It looks like LAFC and Indy 11 need to win, right? Yeah. Okay. So an LAFC and Indy final will send them to the CONCACAF Champions League, which would be kind of funny, right? You imagine Sebastian.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Sebastian Gonzalez suiting up against like America at oh my goodness, what's the name? The IUPUI soccer stadium Like
My
that's
kingdom to see that happen.
I would like fly over there to watch like Club Leon play Guenzati's Indy 11 at the IUPUI soccer stadium. That's what dreams are made of right there. And like genuinely, that's like really cool. Like because it's not like it's funny, but it's cool. Like it's really cool. That's kind of like what I think soccer should be, right? Allowing these like non, fancy bougie stadiums to host big games like that potentially, right? So we're all rooting for Indy, I think. And I guess that means I'm rooting for LAFC too. So here we are. At Carlos CPA Town on Twitter. Follow me and we'll spew Indy 11 propaganda over the next several hours together.
That's right. And you can like and subscribe to our podcast, get the full experience on YouTube. You already know all of that stuff. We are also on the Spotify and iHeartRadio apps, Apple and Google Podcasts, wherever you are, we are too. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. We will see you next week when we are previewing the game against Colorado Springs. Yep. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.